Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition for Wednesday, December 16th, 2015. Wonderful to have you all with me today. And of course, we have plenty to talk about because last night was one of the Republican debates, another CNN debate, and I do so enjoy the debates, as you know. So far, I think my hope is coming true that I often said that the 2012 Republican debates, I thought, were some of the greatest television in the history of television. And the 2016 debates thus far have not disappointed in that regard. So we'll get to that in a moment. So a couple quick things, of course. A lot of great guests this week on the radio edition of the show. For the television edition today, I'm riding solo. But, of course, Monday night, if you missed it, we do archive them all on IPM Nation. We had two great guests. Rob Arnaudin from the Rob and Slim Show joined us. And then we talked with Nigerian author Emor David, who he has an interesting story. So you can find the archive for that on IPM Nation right now. And you can access that on demand. Not right now. Stay with me for now. And then last night we had Jeff Knox from the Firearms Coalition. And I definitely want to get Jeff back in kind of a regular rotation. It had been a long time since he'd been on the show. But we had a very interesting conversation. And he had some strong opinions about how the Republican Party, how conservatives in the Republican Party are handling or mishandling this idea of how to deal with Muslims who want to enter the country. And, of course, Trump's ideas to, keep them all out and whatnot. And Jeff is very concerned about the damage that's doing to conservatives. And you can read his column, which we discussed on WorldNet Daily. He writes a column on there. And really, really interesting guy. Tomorrow night, yes, Thursday night on the show, we'll have Dave Cooley from a new program coming to IPM Nation called Muslims for Liberty, beginning in January, the first Sunday in January, every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1, immediately following Free Talk Live. So we're going to talk with Dave tomorrow night on Unleashed, Unleashed is weeknights at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1. We'll have Dave on for what I'm sure will be a controversial edition of the show. I'm excited about carrying Muslims for Liberty on IPM Nation. I think it's going to be really great, and I think it's probably going to really bug some people too. But, we kind of like that. We like the controversy and all that good stuff. So quite a week for guests. Jen's been doing a great job with the booking. But today I wanted to just be here alone, just me, even though one is the loneliest number. I heard that somewhere. But because, of course, I love the debates. I love doing the debate analysis. And last night, like I said, did not disappoint. So, my thoughts. And actually, I forgot to pull it up as we were getting ready to go on the air. Let me see if I can grab my Facebook feed. Because what I try to do during the debates is I like to make notes with Facebook postings. I know that kind of the big thing now in media is people like to live tweet during the debates. Twitter is difficult for me when it comes to politics. I don't like having to limit myself to 140 characters because I think that in politics so often one of the things that goes wrong, one of the problems we have in terms of our political dialogue in this country is that everything gets sort of dumbed down and hyper-simplified. And when you only have 140 characters to express yourself, of course you have to hypersimplify things in order to fit that. So I tend to stick to Facebook, and I like posting on Facebook while watching the debate. So last night's debate on CNN definitely had some surprises. I'll take a look at the Facebook post in a moment, but let me give you my overall impressions. And by the way, if you skip the debate, I would suggest going online and finding it. I'm sure there's many postings of it on YouTube. I think it's definitely worth watching. It was interesting. There were surprises, and like I said, it's thus far it's lived up to the 2012 debates. I mean, in 2012, you had some really colorful characters in the Republican debates, which made it interesting. I mean, you had Rick Santorum, who actually is running this time as well, but he's been relegated as being an opening act. He's not on the main stage, but last time you had Rick Santorum on the main stage. You had Michelle Bachmann, who is crazy. You had Herman Cain, who is very interesting. Newt Gingrich, who is always very, very smart guy, very conservative. I don't agree with him, but very smart and very quick with the one-liners. He was all about the one-liners in 2012. So, you know, with that field of candidates, of course, the 2012 debates were just awesome. But so far, these are proving to be pretty good too. So, quick impressions last night. I was very surprised because I had predicted on Monday night on the show that, I'd read something that Jeb Bush had said at some campaign event. Somebody asked Jeb Bush about Trump, and Jeb had said that December 15th will be the beginning of Trump's decline, and thus indicating that at the debate last night, he was foretelling, that he was going to really take it to Trump, and that he was going to show Trump, And I made fun of him. I made fun of Jeb on my show because I said, no, he's not. It's going to be the same thing. Jeb is such a klutz rhetorically. He just doesn't have it in him. He doesn't have the fire in his belly. He's not quick and sharp enough, And on the rare occasion that he does get off a good line, a good zinger on Trump or somebody else, he gets that sort of half smile like he's thinking, oh, look at me, I did good. And it's terrible. So I predicted that no, December 15th will not be the beginning of Trump's decline. And no matter what Jeb says, he's going to go in there and he's going to do poorly, and Trump will emasculate him yet again, as he always does, and nothing will change. And I was wrong, and I underestimated Jeb Bush. Last night at the debate, Jeb Bush, I thought, did very well. One of the things I posted on Facebook kind of toward the end, and I didn't get to quite see the entire debate, by the way. I missed the last few minutes, closing statements and whatnot, because it was getting close to 11 p.m. and I had to get on the air. We do the radio edition from the Uptown Auto Repair studio, and I had to I had to do that, so I had to miss the last few minutes. But closing statements are usually garbage anyway. Closing statements and opening statements, it's just a bunch of empty rhetoric and here's why I'm the best, and just a bunch of verbiage that doesn't actually add up to anything substantive. So I don't really feel badly that I missed the closing statements, but I was very surprised by Jeb Bush. He did not, in my view, come across as clumsy. He, in fact, seemed very sort of sure of himself, very assertive, forceful. He seemed to be speaking with a more forceful tone. He was very direct and blunt with Trump about, one line he said to Trump, you can't insult your way to the presidency. Sort of trying to draw that distinction that Trump, he likes to insult people and put people down. Jeb doesn't really do that. I mean, we saw Jeb get a little bit aggressive with Marco Rubio in the last debate, but for the most part, Jeb doesn't resort to that, and which is fine. It's really not in his character anyway. He's clearly uncomfortable, typically, with attacking people. I remember before he announced his candidacy, Jeb Bush had said that he would only run if he could run joyfully. And I don't know if he ever actually explained exactly what he meant by that, but I took that to mean he only wanted to run if he felt that he could run a positive campaign, not full of negative attacks on people and, the politics of personal destruction, a phrase that we sometimes hear. He wanted to do something positive and uplifting. Good on him. And then Donald Trump shows up and makes it impossible to really do that, because Trump takes it to the gutter more than anyone we've ever seen. Loves to insult people. He'll even resort to insulting people on their appearance. The kind of ad hominem you never see in politics. What he said about Carly Fiorina. He once, during a debate, insulted Rand Paul about his looks. And so given how klutzy Jeb has been and how clearly uncomfortable he has been being adversarial with his opponents on the debate stage, I thought, no, it's just talk. We've heard this talk from him before. He talked about rebooting his campaign and doing this and that. That's just talk. I was wrong. No, he was very, very good last night. And he looked like, and I think I posted this on Facebook, at one point he really kind of seemed like he was in charge, and he made Trump seem small. And Trump did seem small last night. That was by far Trump's worst night. So I have to give a lot of credit for to Jeb Bush. I mean, I've been a little bit surprised when I look at some of the feedback just in the media today. The consensus from what I saw online so far seems to be Jeb definitely did better than he has done previously and sharpened his attack, but, you know, he still wasn't great. I thought he was very good. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Jeb supporter, you know, although I do support him on immigration. He's the one Republican candidate who I think really gets it on immigration. But other than that, you know, I'm not a Jeb supporter. I've already endorsed my candidate, and it's not Jeb. It's not any of these people. You know, I've endorsed Darrell W. Perry, who's a libertarian running for president. But it was a good night for Jeb Bush. I, at one point, said that I really think last night Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz owned that debate, and Rand Paul even to a lesser extent. A lot of people are giving credit, and this also kind of surprised me, but again, looking at things online, a lot of people are saying that Marco Rubio had a great night and that he really came out of last night looking good. I thought Rubio, you know, he's pretty good at the debates in terms of, you know, he's slick, he's smooth, you know, he doesn't make any major gaffes. He's pretty good at this, but I don't think in terms of substance, I don't think he's anything special, and I didn't see anything last night that impressed me. So I disagree with what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are saying it was Rubio's night. I disagree. Rubio did get into a lot with Ted Cruz, and I did make a comment on Facebook at one point. It seems like the Cubans just can't get along. But Ted Cruz, I thought, also had a very good night. Ted Cruz, for the first time that I can remember, actually struck me last night during the debate as something less than frightening. Because Ted Cruz is very conservative and he's a darling of the Tea Partiers, and he scares me a bit. But I didn't feel any sort of palpable fear or terror last night watching Ted Cruz. He actually seemed somewhat reasonable. And both he and Jeb, and I suppose Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, they all seemed more statesmanlike and presidential than Trump. Trump seemed diminished. Now, one thing I noticed very early is that Trump wasn't getting a lot of time. Now, Trump is the front runner, and whether anyone likes it or not, because people complain, oh, my candidate didn't get to talk much. My candidate didn't get much questions. Why does everybody else get to talk more than my candidate? Well, if your candidate's in single digits, that's what's going to happen. Trump is the front runner. So Trump naturally tends to, suck up the oxygen in the room. He's going to get the most airtime because he's the front runner. Last night, though, it didn't seem like, you wouldn't know. If you watched last night's debate without any knowledge at all of what the polls looked like, of how well Donald Trump's been doing thus far in this nominating process, you wouldn't know. Well, I guess the process hasn't started yet, really. That starts with the primaries. But on the way to the nominating process, you wouldn't know that Donald Trump was a front runner if you watched last night's debate cold with no prior knowledge of how this campaign has gone. You wouldn't know it. Well, maybe you'd figure it out because he was at the center, because they usually put whoever's doing the best at center stage. But aside from that, if you didn't bother to notice that, the geography of things, you wouldn't know that Trump was the front runner. He didn't get a lot of questions in the beginning. The only hint you might have is the moderators asking other people, how they felt about things that Trump had said. But Trump himself wasn't getting asked a lot of questions. I mean, he kind of seemed to disappear for a while. That was very interesting, and it makes me wonder. And I wonder if there was something to that in terms of, when the RNC, the Republican National Committee, puts on these debates, they're very concerned. Reince Priebus, head of the RNC, is very concerned about Donald Trump being the nominee. He doesn't want Trump to be the nominee. The Republican establishment doesn't want Trump to be the nominee. I'm talking about the people in charge. I'm not talking about the voters. He's doing very well in the polls. But there's a lot of concern because, as I've been predicting, and they know it too, if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, and I still think he will be, regardless of his dismal performance last night, if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, Hillary Rodham Clinton is our next president. I absolutely believe that. Unless something changes drastically, and I know it's incredibly early. We're still a couple of months away from the New Hampshire primary. It's incredibly early to be making these predictions. But I truly believe with the trajectory that we are now on, unless something drastically changes, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee and Hillary Clinton will be the next president. I'm very confident in making that prediction. The one caveat that I've offered is, the one thing that could throw the presidency to Trump in that scenario would be a major scandal. If a major scandal broke regarding Hillary or regarding the Clintons. And that is plausible because we are talking about the Clintons. So there could be an October surprise or even a very last minute November surprise or something developing over the summer. But even that might not be enough because, again, we are talking about the Clintons. Nothing sticks to them. They're Teflon. They could get hit with some sort of major scandal and she'll still beat Trump. But that's what I think will happen, and the RNC knows it. If Trump is the nominee, they lose. They lose the White House. Hillary will be the next president, or Bernie Sanders. But I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. I do believe it will be Hillary. So other impressions though last night. And the reason I say this, by the way, that I still think Trump will be the nominee is because, I haven't had a chance yet, really this afternoon to look at how poll numbers may have been affected or anything by last night's debate. But my suspicion is that there's probably people right now on social media and just in casual conversation right now going, Trump supporters going, well, you know what? That debate was rigged against Trump, and it's this liberal media conspiring to bring Trump down and whatnot, and the media is unfair to Trump, and so his supporters won't waver. Trump will continue to be the nominee because we saw a hint of this last night. See, last night during the debate, Trump at one point started whining about how he thought the debate was rigged against him, saying that, accusing the moderators of leading his opponents like Jeb down this path of being confrontational with Trump, right? So Trump had a problem with the questions. It came off as kind of whiny, as far as I'm concerned. This was kind of toward the end. It was definitely in the second hour, toward the end of the second hour, I think. And I think that was kind of a signal. I think he knew exactly what he was doing by saying that. There was a risk in saying something like that because he comes across as a whiner, quite frankly. But I think that was a dog whistle. I think that was a signal to his supporters that, hey, after this debate, because I know I'm blowing it tonight, so after this debate, I need all of you, my Trump supporters, to complain about how the media treated me unfairly during the debate, and that will gin up sympathy, and I'll still be the front runner. He will still be the front runner. Jeb probably did himself some favors last night and will move up in the polls if he hasn't already. Again, I haven't had a chance to look at any of that, but it's not going to matter. Trump will still be the nominee. Trump, by the way, too, looked a little different last night. I noticed his hair was a darker shade. It wasn't the usual orange. And I also noticed his comb forward, or whatever the hell that is, was less pronounced than usual. I don't know if he just got a haircut or if it's a toupe and he's wearing a different wig, but I noticed his hair was more presidential than normal. He had a less weird hairstyle than he normally does. So just an observation. I know people talk too much about his hair, but I'm interested not so much in the way he styles it and whatnot, but the color of his hair has always been interesting to me because I've always wondered, how is it that when he was younger, he had brown hair, he had dark brown hair, if you look at pictures of him from the 80s, and then his hair, he basically turned into a redhead somehow. Most people, as they get older, their hair turns gray. His hair turned red. Very strange to me. So I did a little research. I'll admit it. Yes, I did, because I was that curious. And it turns out, apparently, Trump dyes his hair. And he just dyes it different colors. There's, I found a whole article on some TMZ or somewhere about it. And they showed different pictures of Donald Trump through the years. And I'd forgotten about this, but at one time, Trump's hair was gray. Trump actually had gray hair. He let it go completely gray for a short time. There's pictures of it. So he dyes his hair. Nothing wrong with that. I don't care. But that explains how he got to be a redhead. How he went from having brown hair to being a redhead, because he colors his hair. And I suspect he probably said to his stylist at some point before last night's debate, well, let's dial down the orange thing and go back to more of a sort of a light brown or something. And the comb over forward back thing, whatever, was toned down a little bit. That like flop of hair on the side that he has wasn't sticking out as much. It wasn't as pronounced. Anyway, somebody else who impressed me last night was Rand Paul. Rand Paul has been a disappointment in some ways, but on foreign policy, Rand Paul continues to be the least frightening Republican in this race. And he really was speaking some truth last night. You got all these Republicans who, notice they all argue that Obama's ISIS strategy is terrible. Obama has no idea what he's doing, and his strategy for combating ISIS is just awful. He's so incompetent in all this. Meanwhile, the rest of them, they all throw these things out. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. No two strategies, so-called strategies, that these candidates offer sound alike. One of them wants to do a no-fly zone over Syria. Another one wants to, we got to work on toppling Assad and this and that. They all present it as though Obama is just so bad at this. And if you elect me and put me in there, well, I've got the answer. Easy peasy. I'll fix it, and we'll defeat ISIS. And it's such BS. The reason no two of them have the exact same strategy is because they're all just guessing. It's like I said on Facebook last night. It's like they're all blindfolded and they're just playing, pin the tail on the Islamic jihadist. None of them have any idea. They're just throwing things out there because, they want to present something that sounds different than what Obama is doing. But none of them really know. They're all clueless. None of them will get it done. You can't bomb an idea out of existence anyway. We're not fighting. Actually, in some ways, they almost do us a favor by calling themselves the Islamic State, because by presenting themselves as having some sort of sovereignty, it probably makes the idea of fighting them more palatable to some people, because then it sounds like we are actually fighting a nation state as opposed to a concept or an idea, terrorism. Or we're not even really supposed to say terrorism anymore. Now we're supposed to say terror, the war on terror. But, so they all sound crazy to me. Even John Kasich, who up until last night I had said John Kasich was the least repulsive of the Republicans running. Kasich said a few things last night that really bothered me. One of them was, as far as Russia and their role in all of this, he said it's about time that we step up and punch Russia right in the mouth. I don't want to punch Russia in the mouth. Rand Paul, the one guy who actually injected some sanity into this, and this was after Carly Fiorina had said all the crazy stuff she says. Carly Fiorina, the most dangerous of these people, if she's actually serious about what she says. I mean, she wants to take us right back to the Cold War. She wants to not talk to Putin. She wants to have a no-fly zone and rebuild our missile bases in Europe right under Putin's nose, and Poland and all this stuff. I mean, she really, well, if Carly Fiorina's president, which she won't be, but if she is, within 6 months, we'll be in a nuclear war. This woman's nuts. although she seemed a little more subdued, oddly enough, compared to previous debate performances. But still, I think she's unhinged. But Rand Paul, the one guy who said, and I was actually surprised and taken aback in a good way by his bluntness when he said this. Because Rand Paul, I think it was right after Carly Fiorina spoke, or maybe Ben Carson. Rand Paul, on camera, you see him shaking his head like he almost just wanted to do this. Like he just couldn't believe the insanity he was hearing from these people. And he said, look, this no-fly zone idea is crazy. Because Carly Fiorina, yes, it was Carly, she had said, we need a no-fly zone over Syria, and we need to tell the Russians, this applies to you too, by the way, and if we catch you flying in that no-fly zone, we're going to shoot down a plane. Rand Paul seems to be the one person on the Republican stage who is actually concerned about the potential consequences of that and said, if you establish a no-fly zone over Syria, that's crazy. Because then if a Russian airplane violates that airspace and you feel obligated to shoot it down and you do so, we're going to end up in World War III. We're going to end up in a nuclear war with Russia. After all these years after the Cold War. You know, I grew up as a child of the 80s. I grew up worried, very worried about the prospect of nuclear war. Obsession is probably too strong a word. Preoccupation, not so much. I was definitely preoccupied with the prospect of nuclear war. I enjoyed seeing the Cold War come to an end and not have that hanging over our heads all the time. Now, granted, some of that, I know, sounds a bit naive because, look, those nukes are still out there. There's a lot that could still go wrong. You know, there's loose nukes that after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, you know, they had Russian scientists selling off materials and secrets and everything just because, you know, just to feed their families, because all of a sudden they were all out of a job. And there's stuff out there we don't know. ISIS might have some of it. We don't know, okay? There's still a lot that could go wrong, okay? But I don't want to end up back in the Cold War. And that's where these people want to take us. Yes, I know that Putin has been behaving badly. I will stick up for Obama on this, though, because they're constantly talking about how weak Obama has been and how Putin doesn't take him seriously and this and that, and they blame Obama for emboldening Putin and these aggressive moves that he's made going into Ukraine and whatnot. But, and you know what? Maybe Obama has contributed to that in some way by not being tough enough with Putin. I don't know. But here's what I do know. I'm glad that Obama has been very careful in dealing with Putin. I like that. I like that when Putin went into Ukraine, Obama said, and by the way, anyone who says Obama hasn't done anything about that is flat 100% wrong. We have been hitting them with economic sanctions. We've been hitting the Russians with economic sanctions under Obama's direction very hard. And we have done significant damage to the Russian economy. That is a fact. So to suggest Obama hasn't responded is wrong. But Obama has not responded militarily. And I am very, very glad that he has not. Because what is the end result if we begin to get into some sort of proxy war with Russia? Well, we've been in proxy wars with the Russians before. I mean, that's what the Iran-Iraq war, what part of that was about, right? Iraq was with us and the Iranians were with the Russians. And, you know, we were helping the Iraqis fight the Iranians because, you know, it was in effect part of the Cold War, a proxy war. But there's always the danger of a proxy war becoming, well, it would be, I think, back to the Cold War at that point. If we are arming, if we are militarily helping the Ukrainians beat back the Russians out of Ukraine, out of Crimea, we are in certainly a proxy war at that point. And I would say that is Cold War status. And there's always that risk if we engage the Russians directly. God help us. If we establish a no-fly zone over Syria and we end up shooting down one of their planes or they end up shooting down one of our planes, the chain of events that could set off, I'm telling you, Rand Paul, the only one on that stage who seems to have any clue about the potential danger we're in if we establish a no-fly zone over Syria. And he said that. And he did use the phrase World War III. And I think he might have, I don't remember exactly, but I think he might have even used the phrase nuclear war. So as much as Rand Paul has been a disappointment in some ways, I no longer find John Kasich the least repulsive of the Republicans running. Rand Paul, absolutely the least repulsive, because Rand Paul is the only person on that stage last night who I would feel comfortable with that he's not going to do something stupid and get us into a nuclear war. I would prefer not to have a nuclear war if nobody else minds. I understand that we're America and we have to be big and bold and we're the last remaining superpower and this and that. We can't let anybody push us around and yeah, we got to punch Putin right in the mouth and all that. I know that tough, macho, nationalist jingoism makes everyone just feel really good. But could we maybe possibly, while we're at it, inject a little bit of common sense and pragmatism into that and not get into a nuclear war with a country that all these years after the Cold War, something Dick Cheney said back in 2000 before the Bush administration took office. I don't give Dick Cheney credit for a lot, but once in a while, he said a few things along the way that I liked. And one of them that he said was, he said this to Ted Koppel on Nightline all the way back in January of 2000, right before taking office as vice president. He said, one thing we must never, ever forget in dealing with the Russians is that the former Soviet Union still has the military capability with their nuclear warheads to destroy the United States, completely incinerate the United States within a matter of minutes. And, you know, Kasich can talk about wanting to punch the Russians in the mouth, and Fiorina can talk about these no-fly zones and whatnot, but, you know, I would really, none of this is worth us all dying for. It's not. You know, and these people are very scary and very dangerous. I'm not talking about the Russians. I'm not talking about the ISIS. I'm talking about these Republicans. And by the way, not just them either. This isn't a partisan thing. I'm not just attacking Republicans. Hillary Clinton says all kinds of scary stuff too. Hillary Clinton is a warmonger. Hillary Clinton is very hawkish. I have no more confidence or faith in her than I do in someone like John Kasich, who again said very scary stuff last night, or some of these others. I would have more confidence in her than, say, Carly Fiorina, because Fiorina, like I said, she terrifies me when she talks about foreign policy. She really does sound like she just wants to get in there and just, start launching missiles right away. But Hillary Clinton is also very, very dangerous in this regard. I mean, given the choice between Rand Paul and Hillary Clinton, I'd go with Rand Paul 100%. The unfortunate thing is, Rand Paul, and if Joe LaChance, who's been on the show a couple times, if he's watching this, he's probably happy to hear me saying this about Rand Paul, but because he's a Rand Paul guy. The problem with Rand Paul is he is extremely dangerous in another regard, because Rand Paul, while I think he would keep us from nuclear Armageddon, he would, I think, potentially trigger an economic Armageddon. And I say that because Rand Paul, libertarian type guy, and which so am I in most ways, but also he's a darling of the Tea Partiers, because Rand Paul likes to vote against raising the debt ceiling. And I don't want to get into that whole thing right now, because it's too much of a digression from what we're talking about. But longtime viewers or listeners of the show know how I feel about this. You cannot allow the United States, under any circumstances, to default on our debt for the first time in our nation's history. Because any economist will tell you that if we actually went into default, which is what happens when you don't raise the debt ceiling, it's not the same thing as the budget. A lot of people don't understand this. They think that, they see a guy like Rand Paul voting against the debt ceiling, and they think that he's voting against increasing our federal budget. And they say that's a good thing. He's a fiscal conservative. He doesn't want to increase the federal budget. It's not the same thing. The federal budget is how much we're going to spend. The debt limit, you raise the debt limit because you have to pay back on that debt. You have to pay back the interest on that debt. And if we don't raise the debt limit itself to accommodate that obligation, that money that we've already spent, that we've already borrowed, that we're saying we're going to pay back, if you don't raise the debt limit itself and then you send the country into default, really any economist will tell you, this is not some crazy left-wing Keynesian economic theory. Any economist will tell you, for the United States of America to default on our debt for the first time ever would trigger a catastrophic global depression. It would wreck the United States economy virtually overnight, and it would make the Great Depression look like the Roaring '20s. It would completely unravel the global economy. And Rand Paul, I fear, if he is president, would potentially, by not wanting to increase the debt limit, which, even Reagan, everybody's big conservative hero, right? Ronald Reagan used to say, you have to raise the debt limit. I don't like it, but you have to do it. To not do it would be reckless and irresponsible, and it would destroy the American economy. So for my conservative friends who think that we should default, even, your hero, Saint Reagan, said, no, that's stupid. Don't do that. So I fear Rand Paul in that way. Now, given the option, between an economic Armageddon and a global thermonuclear Armageddon, well, I'll pick the economic Armageddon because then life is really going to suck, but at least we're not all dead. At least we haven't been incinerated. So, maybe I'll go with Rand Paul in that regard, but maybe I'll switch my party affiliation and vote Republican in the primary and vote for Rand Paul. I don't know. But let me look at my Facebook here and see what other notes I made. And then I would like to, if we have time, do some fact checking on the debates because, and again, Republicans and Democrats alike at these debates, they bend the truth and sometimes just outright lie to try and make their points. That's the nature of national politics. It's fundamentally dishonest. All right, so this is what I put on Facebook. I'll read these in order. I might not read all of them. I might skip some, but, I already talked about the opening statements. Dr. Carson continues to fail to take my advice and drink a gallon of coffee before the debate. Yes, I understand that it would make him have to pee really badly while having to stand there for 2 hours. It's just that there's something presidential about someone whose eyes open all the way when they speak. Trump was strangely subdued in the opening. And I wonder, too, if that was strategic on his part, because during his opening remarks, he didn't seem as fiery as he usually does. He seemed calmer. Maybe he was exhausted. Jeb is clearly very intentionally trying to speak with a stronger tone and be more aggressive. It won't last. Trump will trample over him like he always does. That was my prediction, and I was wrong. I figured, Trump will ultimately emasculate Jeb at some point during the debate, and he didn't. Jeb speaking the truth about banning all Muslims. He's right. He's absolutely right. Jeb showing me something here. Still don't think it would last, and I was wrong about that. It did last. I forget who said this. I think it was Chris Christie. Blaming what happened in San Bernardino on Obama. I said blaming San Bernardino on Obama is such typical partisan intellectually dishonest hackery. I stand by that. Cruz now speaking some truth. Seems to understand not all Muslims are evil. Good. That impressed me about Ted Cruz. And of course, that's, he breaks with Trump on that. Cruz doesn't want to ban all Muslims coming into the country. He seems to understand why that's a problem. Carly talking about solutions. None of these people have a single clue about how to defeat ISIS. War, more war. Gotta have more war, lots of war. Bin Laden is laughing in his grave. And I made that comment because Bin Laden is on record as having said that, the way to defeat the West is to get them ensnared in these conflicts that they'll never be able to extricate themselves from, and eventually will bankrupt them. And these clowns are intent on proving him right. Corey J. Turner, who he's been on the show before and actually used to have a show on IPM Nation. He'll sometimes comment on my posts, and he said, he's underwater, bro. You can't laugh underwater, referring to bin Laden. Let's see. Ted Cruz called Rubio a liar without actually using the word liar quite skillfully. Rubio is smooth sometimes. He's as slick as Ted Cruz's hair. Yeah, like I said, I mean, Rubio, he's pretty smooth in these debates. Christie makes a good point about executive experience. I don't like Chris Christie, but I have to give him some credit here. And I've heard him kind of do this before, but he did a little more directly last night. He said something about, because you have all these candidates who are, like I said, they're putting forth their ideas about how to defeat ISIS. And Chris Christie said, this is what happens when, you've got a bunch of people who either serve in the House or Senate debating and arguing about this stuff. Nothing gets done. It's just endless arguing and debate. He said, I have executive experience as a governor. I know what it's like to actually make decisions, not just debate and vote on stuff. He said it much more succinctly than I just did. I don't remember his exact words. At one point I said, where's Trump? Did Reince Priebus rig this to largely ignore him? He's the front runner. What's going on here? Even Rand gets to talk more. Then I said, Jeb continues to speak some truth. He's being more assertive, seems more confident. He's ready for this. At that point, I was beginning to realize Jeb really was in it for the full debate. I said, Carly seems tired, which she did. I don't know if she wasn't feeling well. I don't know if she was trying to come off as less aggressive, but she seemed tired to me. Then I said, Carly seems slightly less insane than usual. I'm sure the crazy is coming. And I was right. The crazy did come when she started talking about the no-fly zone over Syria. Let's see. All of these candidates agree Obama's ISIS strategy is bad. Yet notice how no two of these candidates have a similar alternate strategy. That's because nobody really knows what to do. Let's see. Trump's mugging while Jeb speaks continues to make me concerned that he's suffering a series of small strokes. Trump has a very expressive face. He likes to make a lot of faces while other people are talking. Although even that, he seemed to dial it down last night. Although maybe that's just because he wasn't getting as much airtime as usual, as much face time. I said, smart crowd. They're not letting Trump get away with anything. They booed Trump. On more than one occasion, they openly booed Donald Trump last night. And Trump seemed just completely perplexed by it. Like, why are you booing me? He actually said that. Damn, Chris Christie making a fantastic point about these people who complain about our military being degraded and whatnot while being directly involved in these bad decisions through their votes in Congress. He's right. Again, I don't like Chris Christie, but this sort of is an extension of his earlier comments. But now he's saying, look, you've got people on this stage who served in Congress who actively participated in these votes that have degraded and downsized our nation's military, and they act like it's all Obama's fault when some of these people on this stage are part of the problem. They've been serving in government. They've been part of the process. So, they're putting it all on Obama, but what about they're complicit in this too. And I thought that was a great point. Good for him. Ben Carson said something about we have a God, I feel embarrassed whenever Ben Carson talks about foreign policy. He's in so far over his head. I posted out, we have a phobia about boots on the ground, Dr. Carson. Those were Ben Carson's exact words. We have this phobia about that phrase, boots on the ground, because we're afraid of really committing to ground troops. I said, how about some Americans are rightfully skeptical about our foreign policy and when we should send our military to die for consistently horrendous strategy, a-hole. Let's see. Then I posted, Cruz is absolutely correct about toppling Assad. He sounds strangely reasonable to me tonight. He did. Ted Cruz impressed me. He was saying, this idea that we have to topple Assad in Syria. Well, look what happens when the United States when we commit to regime change. We committed to getting Saddam out of Iraq, and then Iraq fell apart. Look what's happened in Libya. That's now a failed state. We should not be. It's not that these people like Saddam and Gaddafi weren't bad guys, and it's not like Assad isn't a bad guy. Yeah, these are bad guys. But that doesn't mean we know best and we should try to get them out and then, expect them to just put it all back together overnight. Doesn't work that way. We really did create ISIS in so many ways. I posted again, this was referring to Trump getting booed. Why does Vegas hate Trump? Did Sheldon Adelson already endorse somebody else? Sheldon Adelson, of course, who has a lot of money to put behind whomever he decides to. Carson continues to be in way over his head on foreign policy. Rand seems to understand that the Middle East is complicated. The others all want you to believe that we just need the right strategy, and it will all be so simple. Rand doesn't BS us. That's true. Trump actually makes a good point about doing more than one thing at a time. We can't be fighting everyone at once. Yeah, Trump making a point on foreign policy that I agreed with. Maybe it's the lighting, but Trump's hair appears less orange, more of a dark brown. Maybe Vegas prefers orange, and that's why they're mad at Trump. Carly Fiorina is very dangerous. Obama isn't to blame for ISIS. Sorry, but he's not. And that's a narrative. Again, I'm not a big Obama fan, but I do feel compelled to stick up for him a little bit in some of these instances because, the Republicans try to spin it as Obama pulled us out of Iraq too soon, and that led to the creation of ISIS, and that's BS. ISIS was created because of George W. Bush deciding to invade Iraq, disbanding the Iraqi army, and that led to chaos. And, it doesn't matter. First of all, well, two things about us leaving. Number one, we didn't leave because Obama arbitrarily picked this date, we're getting out. I know Republicans want to spin it that way, that, Obama made this horrendous misjudgment that by this date, that would be a good time for us to leave. Or that was one of his campaign promises, he'd get us out of Iraq. And so it's just all political. That was the negotiated agreement under the George W. Bush administration. That was the agreement, that we would leave by that date. According to the status of forces agreement, that is when we were supposed to go. Obama had nothing to do with setting that date. That was the deadline for us to leave Iraq. I mean, I'm sorry, but facts are facts. And by the way, it doesn't matter when we left anyway. We could have left, 5 years sooner or 10 years from now. The same thing would have happened in the end. ISIS would have happened no matter what, no matter when we left. As soon as we left, everything was going to break open. We have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Norm. What
Norm.
are you doing it for?
I'm not sure. Why? What you got?
Pop on then. My guest got the flu and can't make it. Want to pop in?
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, I would love to. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll see you then.
All right, thanks, Norm.
We'll talk about hypnosis or whatever comes up. Whatever we might talk about.
Sure. No, sounds good to me. I'm game.
Okay.
All right,
see you
Norm.
then.
All right, Norm. Thank you. All right, so I'll be joining Norm later on Norm and Friends. Norm and his co-host Lori. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Almost to the end here with these. I said Trump is whining. Let's see. Cubans just don't get along in debates, referring to Rubio and Ted Cruz. I said on immigration, Jeb's the only one who remotely gets it. Let's see. Jeb and Cruz, and to a lesser extent Rand, have owned this tonight, and Trump has had his worst showing yet by far. And tomorrow, Trump will blame CNN and the alleged liberal media for treating him unfairly during the debate, and Republicans everywhere will go, yeah, that's right, they treated Trump unfairly. And then Trump will continue on his path to the nomination unencumbered, and he knows it. And that was it. That was the end of my commentary on the debate last night. But again, I mean, it's worth watching. I would suggest to everyone, find it online and take a look. I wanted to get to, and we only have a few minutes left, so let's see. Where do I want to go here? Let's go to the wrongometer on Politico.com, because this won't take long. I mean, I always enjoy, and we'll do more of this during the week on the radio edition of the show. But after a debate or a major speech or whatever, I always enjoy going online to websites like Politico and factcheck.org and whatnot, and PolitiFact. That's the other one I was thinking of, and just finding finding all the fact checking that they do, where they take apart all the just patently wrong things that these people say. So this is what the Politico Wrongometer says. This was let's see. This was posted today. Nine Republican presidential candidates, the fifth debate. Here's Politico's analysis of where the Republican field stretched the truth, steered around some inconvenient facts, or just plain got it wrong. Cruz's version of carpet bombing is not carpet bombing. In describing his plans as commander-in-chief, Ted Cruz said, "I would use overwhelming air power to utterly and completely destroy ISIS. You would carpet bomb where ISIS is, not a city, but the location of the troops. You'd use air power. You'd have embedded special forces direct the air power. But the object isn't to level the city. The object is to kill the ISIS terrorists." His description is pretty much the opposite of carpet bombing. Those are precision strikes aimed at specific targets, blah, blah, blah. All right. Fiorina's claims on Obama-Iraq withdrawal ignore Bush's role. And again, it's not just Fiorina who presents this narrative, but Carly Fiorina faulted President Obama for the 2011 withdrawal from Iraq, saying it was, quote, against the advice of every single general, unquote. That's not exactly the opinion of the entire brass. Just before his retirement, Army Chief of Staff General Raymond T. Odierno in September noted that the Iraq withdrawal actually had its roots in an agreement negotiated by the Bush administration. Quote, that was always the plan. We had promised them that we would respect their sovereignty, unquote. A number of retired U.S. generals dating back to the mid-2000s, including Wesley Clark and William Nash, had also called for the redeployment of U.S. troops. Wyden fact-checks Rubio on surveillance. Criticizing Ted Cruz's vote for the USA Freedom Act, Marco Rubio said the law doesn't give the government any new powers. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, a leading voice on surveillance issues who sits on the Intelligence Committee, responded by issuing a public statement pointing out that Section 102 of the law did expand their powers by allowing law enforcement and intelligence agencies to obtain records in an emergency to get court approval later. Cruz said Obama toppled Mubarak. Don't tell the Egyptians. Ted Cruz said, quote, the Obama administration, encouraged by Republicans, toppled Mubarak, who had been a reliable ally of the United States of Israel, unquote. I remember my BS meter redlined when I heard Cruz say that. It says here, it's unclear how well Cruz remembers the Arab Spring. Egyptian strongman Hosni Mubarak only stepped down after 18 days of relentless protests by Egyptians. As the Tahrir Square demonstrations played out on international television, the White House appeared flummoxed by how to respond to the early days of the Arab Spring, and Obama eventually endorsed his departure. It's true that the U.S. government-financed organizations promoting democracy, quote, played a bigger role in fomenting protests, unquote, than was immediately clear, according to an April 2011 report in the New York Times on how the U.S. nurtured the uprisings of the previous few months, based in part on WikiLeaks cables. But the same article notes, quote, no one doubts that the Arab uprisings are homegrown rather than resulting from foreign intelligence as alleged by some Middle Eastern leaders, unquote. Let's see. Let's do one more. Fiorina claims Obama pushed generals out. This is something I hear from Republicans a lot. Carly Fiorina says, quote, one of the things I would immediately do, in addition to defeating the terrorists at home, would be to bring back the warrior class. Petraeus, McChrystal, Mattis, Keene, Flynn. Everyone was retired early because they told President Obama things he didn't want to hear, unquote. Not exactly. Petraeus, who was commander in Iraq and Afghanistan under Obama, retired from the Army in 2011 when Obama appointed him director of the CIA. He resigned a year later after news of an extramarital affair and a parallel FBI investigation. Stanley McChrystal, then the commander in Afghanistan, was relieved and later retired in 2011 after an unscripted interview for Rolling Stone magazine profile quoted his aides mocking Vice President Joe Biden. And Jack Keane, who served as Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, retired in 2013 when Obama was still an Illinois state senator, years from the presidency. Two that do fit her narrative a bit better are James Mattis, who retired as head of CENTCOM in 2013 and has since been the most critical of Obama, saying that the U.S. was suffering from strategic atrophy, and Michael Flynn, an Army Lieutenant General who retired a year early in 2014 after questioning the Obama administration narrative that the terrorist threat was under control following the 2011 killing of Osama bin Laden. There's more here, but we are just about out of time. So, thank you all for joining me today on the television edition of Unleashed. I hope that you'll join me on the radio edition. Thursday night, of course, will be live on IPM Nation 1 and OTR FM, and my guest will be Dave Cooley of Muslims for Liberty, a new show that we'll be carrying on IPM Nation beginning in January, Sunday nights after Free Talk Live. Really looking forward to that conversation and to the new show. We have a lot of new programming coming up on IPM Nation. Tons of new stuff. So 2016 is going to be a very big year for us. And thank you all. By the way, also, too, thank you to New York City. When we updated last night our top 10 list of cities where we have the most listeners and viewers on IPM Nation, New York City popped up as number 1 for the first time. So thank you, New York. And we appreciate the support. And if you're watching live on Wednesday, well, I'll be back at 4 p.m. with Norm and Lori for Norm and Friends, and then back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper for Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. And that is it for now. Talk at y'all in a bit. Thanks, everybody.